This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Today we have a very important show. Like all our shows are important. A very special guest, one of our favorites of all times. He's one of my favorites. He's a neighbor of ours in Hawaii for Kim and I. And he is a legend wherever he goes because his accuracy in calling markets and all that is, there's very few people as accurate as Bert Dohmen, and he's our guest today. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I'm just looking forward to talking with him, and especially so much going on today. And Bert is one of the best researchers and 45 years of experience. I think he knows what he's talking about. So let's get started.
Well, it's more than that. So, Bert, I'm going to shamelessly plug your Wellington letter. I'm going to show it on screen here so people can look at it. And it's my Bible because in this world of fake news, and as you know, I think much of the news is either fake or biased. You know, they're trying to promote something. The reason I like the Wellington letter so much is because it's real news. It's real important news that you can use to make your decisions about your future. And I've been a subscriber to yours for years. I won't let everybody know I'm not being paid to say this. I have to pay for my own letter, but that's how much I respect this man, Bert Dohmen. And Bert, quickly, how in the world you get his information is fabulous because it's comprehensive. It's not just about the bond market or stock market or ticks or this or that. It's comprehensive. It's a wide-ranging view. How do you get so much information for all these years?
Well, Robert and Kim, first of all, let me just say it's beautiful to be with you here for the first time in this year, and it's been my pleasure, and thank you for your kind remarks. How we do?
Yeah.
Well, I've been doing this for 45 years in my business. That's how old my business is, investment and economic research. We don't manage money. But before that, I was trading for myself, my own money, for about 10 years. So I'm an old timer in this business. And after a while, you kind of figure out what's happening in the market. You know, I'm just always tell people, you want to listen to an analyst, listen to an old one because they have the experience. They've seen it before because things repeat, you know. And for example, what's happening now, I think is pretty similar to the late 1970s, the Jimmy Carter years, and I said that last year, even before the election. Now I say that times 10, because now we have an election which actually gives us a Jimmy Carter. And so I think there's a lot of similarity, and that's important. And that's what launched our Wellington letter in 1977. We're basically the only ones that said higher interest rates are going to be bullish for stocks. Wall Street didn't think that would happen, but the interest rates rose to 1980. The prime rate was 21.5%. Inflation was about 15%, and stocks went up until early 1980. So we were right. Wall Street was wrong, and this is a very similar environment. So if you live long enough, you will have seen what is happening now and at other occasions. You know, and that's how we work. You know, everything repeats.
Yeah. So let me show you. Here's the Wellington letter. The thing I like about it, Bert always has pictures. And, you know, versus YouTube, I can sit here and read, and then you can see I do study, I have notes on the sides and all this. So that's where I get my information. So in a world of fake news, and there's a lot of it, or biased news, you know, I mean, the Wellington letter is priceless. So all of you out there, I highly recommend it. If you want to know what's going to be happening in 2021, I think it could be the best of times and the worst of times. But if you don't want to get your butt handed to you, then I would have the Wellington letter. How much does it cost, Bert?
I think it's $595 a year. The cheapest twice the price because it comes out about 2 or 3 times a month, and it's probably the most comprehensive investment newsletter you will find anywhere.
I would agree. It is comprehensive. Like I'm reading your thing. We're going to talk about Bitcoin because that's what's in everybody's mind, and Everybody knows prices are going up. You don't have to tell somebody the CPI, Consumer Price Index, is going up. We can see it. We can see it everywhere. And then they'll say, well, it's not going up. You know what I mean? And you sit there and you go, why? But at least you go into why. The other thing I like is because, when I was in shipping as a student, and you talked about, why container rates are going up. Well, the reason container rates going up is nothing's being shipped, and they're stacking up in the docks in China. So that means more inflation. If you know what I mean, it's not just, well, inflation is going up. The thing I love about Bert's Wellington letter is that he goes into what's going on really, not some newsreader just talking about why when inflation is going up. Well, tell me something I don't know. Tell me something I don't know. And that's why I like the Wellington letter. So, Bert, how's that for an unbiased? I mean, you're not paying me for this, are you?
I could not have said it better. We always say why.
So I love your letter, man, and I want everybody to get it. $5.95. That's one PPI check, whatever the PPP check, whatever it is. I don't know what it is anymore.
So I've got to put to that point, Bert. Your letters are so jam-packed full of information. You do so much research. I've heard so many scary scenarios of what's coming down the pipeline with Biden and all of the Democrats in office, and it's scary. What is your take on what we're going to be seeing with this new administration and with all these new regulations and policies? What's your take?
Well, my opinion is if you are an informed individual, it is very scary. If you are not informed, you think everything is wonderful. You get the checks from the government. I think we're going to have this UBI, which is Universal Basic Income, which means everybody gets a check from the government every 2 weeks. And, these are the things that will happen. And, if you're not very informed, you will love all these things. You will love, 100 million illegal immigrants coming in and providing cheap labor and so on. You will love these things until you look behind the scenes and you say, oh, boy, a lot of these millions of illegals are criminals. They're gang members, MS-13, etc. And they say, boy, this isn't really helping our country, is it? And but this is the agenda. So it's important to figure out what the agenda is. And nothing in the realm of politics happens by chance. And this is an old wisdom, hundreds of years old. Everything is planned. And what is happening right now is planned so well. And it was planned years ahead, along with the COVID crisis. And so I have to hand it to the people who pulled it off. It's just amazing how they did it.
And then you said in your December Wellington letter, which I highly recommend everybody get, you have information in there I've never seen anywhere else. And you said the vaccine was developed in, 2 hours or like 10 minutes or something? Because it was already developed?
Yeah, there was an article. They were the people who worked, the scientists who worked in developing this new type of vaccine. It's an RNA messenger type of technology, which has not been used on vaccines before. And it was, so everything was there. It was easy to do. And they said they basically drew up the plan for the vaccine in a couple of hours on a piece of paper. These were the scientists that developed the vaccine. So, that's what you're getting. And so maybe they say, oh, it was easy and it was all worked on for the last 20 years. But, I would much rather have more thorough work, and especially looking at the safety aspects or long-term, not the safety aspects. Are you going to die the next day after getting the vaccine? No. What happens to you after a year or 2 or 3 years? This is where the big unknown is, and the virologists who are familiar with the RNA technology warn about that. They warn about it, how these long-term effects can come into play because they are known.
And what is RNA messenger? What does that mean? What does that mean to a person
RNA
or body?
means ribonucleic acid. It's the part of the genome, basically, and the messages send messages to other parts of the genome, and so it's pretty complicated in biotechnology. But it's a totally different technology than the one Merck just abandoned. They were trying to come up with a regular vaccine, like the old style, basically taking a live virus and weakening it, and that they inject into a body, and then the body produces antibodies to fight this virus. That's how vaccines were always done. And
they just abandoned that?
They made the announcement, I think it was yesterday.
Bert, we have to go to break, but, the reason I want everybody to get your letter, like it's priceless is what the thing is. It's real financial information, your analysis, your charts, your pictures, your insights. I'm not saying to believe everything Bert says, because we don't do that. But I'm just saying what Bert's newsletter, the Wellington Letter, does is open up your mind to things you'll never hear about in the news. I'm just surprised you haven't been deplatformed, because I get deplatformed all the time.
I deplatformed myself on Twitter. I was only on Twitter. I took down my Facebook page, I think it was about 4 years ago, and because I didn't like the head of the company, who was less than honest. And Twitter I took down as well, and said goodbye to my loyal followers and thanked them for the patronage. And I said, but when censorship is practiced, I cannot support it.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we'll have more, with Bert Dohmen. He's the 40-something years in the Wellington Letter. He's our neighbor in Hawaii. Every time I go to Hawaii, I have to talk to him face to face because I got to watch his facial expressions also. I don't see it right now because he's not on Zoom. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about fake news. There's also funny news. It doesn't make it, most of the stuff I'm reading today, I don't know why anybody would read it. But then there's Bert's real news or real information you don't get anywhere else. So that's why I recommend the Wellington Letter. When we come back, I'm going to ask Bert a little bit more bigger picture questions rather than what's going to happen to, I'll ask you about Bitcoin because you have your opinions and everybody loves to hear about that. And then gold, silver. But one other question I want to talk to you about is this. That's called CMBSs, collateralized mortgage-backed securities. There was subprime mortgages. But what's going bust in 2021 are CMBSs, collateralized mortgage-backed securities. They're the highest end mortgages there are, and they're going bust. So then when the subprime guys went bust, nobody really cared. But I think what's happening in 2021, or it's already started, are collateralized mortgage-backed securities, which is the prime of all mortgages given to the biggest, richest companies, hedge funds in the world. And if that goes down, what does that mean? So we come back with Bert Dohmen. Again, his letter is a Wellington Letter. Please subscribe to it. I look forward to every month so I can stay ahead of what's really going on in the world. Thank you. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki of the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, or YouTube, as long as we're not deplatformed. And you can always listen to our program. We archive them at richdadradio.com. We archive them for one reason. We don't give financial advice. We don't make recommendations. We're a pure education company, and we want you to learn. And most importantly is that if you listen to this program one more time, the reason it's archived is you'll learn twice as much. But more importantly than that, get together with friends, family, and especially business associates and listen to this program and discuss it. Your education your attention will go quantum. You'll learn stuff you never understood before. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I appreciate I appreciate Bert because he is such a wealth of information, and we have so many questions, and I don't want to. Let's get started.
I just want to promote his letter again. It's a Wellington Letter. There's fake news, and this is real important news. And Bert has insights that you'll never hear anywhere else. It's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. I look forward to it every month, and I study it. It has lots of pictures, which I like, and I'm always making notes in it and stuff like that. So go ahead, Kim.
Okay.
So Bert, we have the Munster, Grandpa Munster, who's Janet Yellen, and she was Fed chairman, and now she's Secretary of Treasury. In your mind, what does that mean to you?
Well, she was known as Easy Janet, and it came from her easy money policies. Okay, not anything else. And so really, she loves easy money, lots of money out there, and so that really confirmed to me last December that we were going into a very highly speculative stock market environment. And I said, this is going to be like the late 1970s, from 78 to 1980. We had that kind of environment. It was extremely profitable. And in early March, I think it was in March 78, the head of the Federal Reserve was fired, and they installed somebody else, G. William Miller. And he said, that was one of his first speeches, we're not going to fight inflation with tight money. We're going to do it with interest rates. In other words, by raising interest rates. And I said, oh boy, that means the stocks are going to become inflation hedges. Wall Street rang the alarm bell and said, bear market ahead, because higher interest rates always cause a bear market. And I said, no way. When you have lots of money in the economy, it's easy to get loans. Then you have high inflation, rising inflation, and then stocks will become an inflation hedge, because companies can pass on the increase in the cost of their materials, their prices. And that's exactly what happened. That's how we got to 15% inflation. And then finally, Paul Volcker came in the early 2000. He tightened up, and then because of tight money, finally we got a prime rate of 21.5%. That was December 10th of 1980. And so, in fact, I remember there was a seminar of Goldman Sachs. Their chief economist, Gary Wenklowski, was there, and he talked about, well, we see a peak in interest rates of 12%. And in the Q&A session, I said, well, our forecast is 20% prime rate. And he said, oh, no, it's impossible. Our financial system would never tolerate that. And I said, yes, it would, if inflation is high enough, because you always want to look at the after inflation cost of money. If the interest rate is 3% and inflation is 4%, you're actually borrowing money at less than the inflation rate, and you're getting free money. And that's
right. So a lot of people, I hate to say this, but a lot of people are too young to remember those days.
Yeah.
I remember going to my favorite, Hihing Chop Suey in Honolulu, and they had to keep whiting out the price of the chop suey because the price was going up so fast. I think you remember those days too.
Yeah.
We're entering that era right now. But so you're saying that Janet Yellen, Grandpa Munster, or whatever it is, she's not there by accident. Biden put her there so they could pump money into the system. What does it mean today?
And what is the connection that she was the Fed chairman and now she's the Treasury Secretary? What does that mean?
It's always the same people. This is the globalists, and it's just like Christine Lagarde. She went from head of the IMF to the head of the European Central Bank. They just play musical chairs. They're always the same people. Look at all the Biden cabinet appointees. They're all from the prior
Obama
administration. Yeah. So it's always the same people, and because they have a certain agenda, and that's why I say you have to know what the agenda is, and then you will be able to figure out things very easily. You will no longer, and we said this last year. I said this is a market environment where fundamentals will have absolutely nothing to do with the price of the stock.
Right.
Forget about earnings. Forget about dividends. Forget about all this BS that you hear on TV all day long. This stock market is based on speculation. That's it.
Right. Yeah? So Bert, we know that right now. Okay, we know that. The reason that I want to recommend your letter is because you go into detail, explain what it means. It's like the call option, put option ratios, and all this. You only get that in the Wellington letter, and that's what I want people to understand. This is not just about gambling. Bert is so accurate in his forecasts; it's shocking. So the question I have for you, because our listeners are a little bit more simple like me. So if inflation goes up, what happens to gold, silver, and Bitcoin?
Well, right now it seems like the big bullion banks are kind of sitting on the price of silver and gold, I expect those prices to go much higher. But I have a feeling that the bullion banks are accumulating it by making people negative. And, we do have trading services that come out about 3-4 times a week. And we give specific recommendations of stocks. And we have another one for ETFs. And we've been making great profits, so especially the stocks. Like one stock was up 72% in one day. Another one was up about 38% one day. But these are speculations. And we tell people, put only a small amount of your money in there. Don't put your whole portfolio. These are speculations. But you can make a lot of money in speculation if you keep your greed in check. Do not.
Right, in your December newsletter, you had the greed factor charts, which are fantastic because it's as high as ever. Let me ask you this other question: Is you have all these Robinhood guys coming in now because they're getting greedy because they don't have jobs, they got student loans, and they're living at home, so they're like Biden hiding in the basement and trading stocks. What do you have to say all of these young speculators, these Robinhood guys?
Well, there are also many different ones. There are some who don't even take a minute to check out the stock that they're investing in. They have no idea what the company does. And there are other people who are much more serious about it and eventually maybe even become great hedge fund managers. I started trading when I was in college and then right out of college. And I started speculating. And because I didn't have much money, I started with $400. And so I had to be in a hurry. I was fully margin most of the time and so on. I really had to pay very close attention. We didn't have monitors, computers, and all that. So I had to go to a brokerage firm every morning, sit in the back gallery and watch the ticker tape. These little green letters that go floating by. You may remember that. And it was a great education, But I have to say, I saw many of the same people who were in the gallery with me, and they got too greedy and they lost it all, Right. So you have to keep your own emotions in check.
So speaking of greed, there's also Bitcoin, but there's also country Bitcoin coming out now, the U.S. crypto. What's your comment on Bitcoin versus country crypto, like Chinese crypto?
Well, Chinese crypto, are you referring to the governmentally issued?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's going to be the thing of the future. I think Bitcoin and the cryptos, there are, 1,000 different ones probably right now. They're all going to be basically legislated out of business. This was an experiment to see if people would accept a digital currency. Now they see people will accept it. And so now it's for the second phase of this experiment is we will issue governmental digital currencies that's called central bank digital currencies, CBDC. And and they will take the place. And then they're going to legislate all the private ones out of business. And one day you will wake up and your Bitcoin will be zero. Okay? Because there are no buyers.
Well, Janet Yellen actually just came out and said, I'm very worried about Bitcoin.
Exactly.
I'm very concerned about it.
Yeah, exactly. And these are the warning shots. They don't want to have people say later on, oh, you never warned us. No, these are the warnings that are going out now. And they're going to get stronger and stronger and stronger because they don't want anybody be blaming them for losing their house. Okay? But it's going to happen. All these private cryptocurrencies are going to be gone.
And so you also said with gold and silver that the bullion banks are sitting on the pricing. They're suppressing the pricing. What's going to happen with gold and silver, in your opinion?
Well, gold and silver have been manipulated for decades by the big bullion banks. They finally have had a number of lawsuits now by the regulators in the U.S. and also in Europe against these big banks. These are the world's biggest banks like Deutsche Bank and so on, and J.P. Morgan, et cetera. And they have been manipulating the price of the precious metals. So they can sit on it. And I always tell people, whenever you get into this, be sure that you know that these prices are manipulated. But they may be able to keep it down for a while, but eventually they have to give up because the public demand will overrun them. you know?
Okay.
And by that time, they would have accumulated enough themselves, and they want the price to go up.
Right. So this is the other question on real estate. You know, like what I see is they're called CMBSs.
Yeah.
You know, there was a subprime mortgage thing in whatever it was in whatever, I can't remember, a long time ago. But now the biggest mortgages are in trouble. Collateralized mortgage-backed securities.
Yeah.
That's all the office buildings, the shopping centers, the cruise ships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What's going to happen when the shopping centers can't make their mortgage payments and office buildings?
Yeah, what's happening right now, the default rate on the CMBS is up to an all-time record of 16.8%. So almost 17% is defaulting. And that's huge. That is huge. So
then
the big investors, big institutions, even pension plans have their money in these because the yield is higher. Yeah, and they're going to take big losses.
Which goes to your point, Robert, about pensions coming down. It's just one more hit they're going to take.
Yeah, exactly.
So the other thing then, so everybody now is excited because the price of real estate is going up, and as you say, the greed. I should have kept that page in the Wellington letter, but Bert has this little greed factor here. It is at all-time highs, and people are jumping in, buying real estate. You know, and every time I see that, I go, "Oh, the end is near." I call it the Wile E. Coyote moment. You know, Wile E. Coyote goes off the cliff and just falls. So everybody's jumping into residential real estate. So what is the correlation, in your opinion, between commercial real estate, which is the office buildings and shopping centers and cruise ships and all the big guys, and the mom and pop owning their house?
Yeah, see, that's the big difference, what you just said. CMBS that's commercial mortgages, okay? Yeah. Shopping centers, cruise ships, all the stuff that isn't making any money, huge losses, they're empty, and hotels, etc., you know? So I wouldn't touch those with a 10-foot pole. And so having said that, let's go to residential. Residential is different. People want to get out of the big cities, especially the ones like Los Angeles. Maybe, I don't know, Los Angeles is a special animal because you got the entertainment industry, you got the professional football teams, basketball teams, etc. But let's say Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, New York City. So the other real estate, people now want to have a gated community. They want a house instead of an apartment. And they want a swimming pool, you know? And so these are things. I know this because I have one of my houses on the market right now in Los Angeles, and the realtor loves it because it's got the pool, it's got the gated community, it's got all the things that I mentioned. It's only 17 minutes from the airport, etc. You know, very convenient. So these are the kind of properties that are in demand now. There's a shortage. There's a shortage of residential properties. Okay, the inventory is very low. At the same time, we've got mortgage interest rates at I think it's a record low. Okay, so that's an unbeatable combination for real estate prices to rise. Residential real estate.
But Bert, you know, I wouldn't buy a property today because of the greed factor is too high. What would you say to somebody who has the greed factor, saying, "Oh, I better jump into real estate, or I better jump into Bitcoin, or I better jump in"? You know, what do you say to those guys?
Well, you know, it depends what your purpose is. Is it for you to live in, or is it as an investment or a speculation? You know, you have to define that. Most people, unfortunately, never define. I ask people, they ask me about a stock. I said, "What are you buying for? What is your holding period? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it half a year? A year?" "Oh, I never thought of that." The answer. You know, people will buy a stock and never think how long, what the time horizon is. That's a mistake. You got to know what your time horizon is, and you should write it down so you don't forget it.
So, Bert, you know, again, I'm recommending everybody get your newsletter, the Wellington letter. In the world of fake news, this is the most important investment you can make, is food for your brain. But I want to give you the last 30 seconds or so. Can you tell the group, the audiences, what other services you have for more specific professional investors? What other services you provide?
Well, we do have a Smarter Stock Trader. And that's, as I said before, 3 to 4 times a week. And we give specific stock recommendations. Our time horizon is anywhere from a few days to maybe 3 to 4 weeks, our holding period. And that does very well. Then we have another one with a similar commentary, but we recommend ETFs. That's easier for people who don't have a lot of money, a lot of time to look at individual investors. But, the most important thing for investors to know now, we're in a very speculative period, and it's going to continue. And this is the time you can make a fortune if you know how to use risk control. You have to have mental protective stops. Don't put them into the market. Don't give your stop to a broker. You write it down and you keep it in your computer, and you say, when it hits that, I'm out. I don't want to, they call it stop loss orders. Okay. So you can make a lot of money. This is also like 1999, early year 2000 was great for us. We said, this doesn't make any sense. I had a stock, it came out at 2.5, Commerce One, and they had no sales, no earnings. And I said, that's a good buy, but I bought it a little late. It was over $100 already. And so I was late, but it kept on going up. I finally sold above 960 because I said it's not going to make it over 1,000. That was a nice gain. The company still had no sales and no earnings. And then, of course, it went to zero. Then went to zero. So you have to know when to get out.
Right.
But it was very profitable.
Hey, Bert.
But you are very aligned to us. You're all about education. Don't be investing if you have no education, if you're not informed. That's the bottom line, and that's what your Wellington letter is about.
Yeah, so thank you very much, my friend. And
thank you very much. And it's always a great pleasure speaking with you. And I have to say, you have the greatest listeners in the world. We get so many comments when people hear this interview and so on, that we really love your listeners. They're really great people. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. That's a compliment, because our listeners are learners. That's why we tune into Rich Dad. Again, I want to thank Bert Dohmen, and old friend and neighbor in Hawaii, and his wisdom is priceless. So thank you all.
Thank you, Bert.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
When we come back, we'll be a final wrap-up and discussion about our friend Bert Dohmen and what he had to say about the future in 2021. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. I want to thank our very special guest and old-time friend, Bert Dohmen. He's the editor-in-chief of the Wellington Letter, and the fabulous, fabulous investor support material. And anyway, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, or YouTube. We make no money. We don't recommend. Don't say, I told you to buy something, because we don't do that. I just tell you to buy this newsletter because it'll make you a better investor. And you can listen to our podcast at richdadradio.com. We archive each one of our podcasts, so you can listen to it again, so you'll pick up twice as much, because repetition is how we learn. But most importantly, you have friends, family, and business associates. Listen to this Rich Dad Radio Show, especially with Bert Dohmen, and discuss it. When you discuss it, people will agree and disagree, but that's your learning will go quantum. Any comments, Kim?
Well, yes, at the start of the show, Bert said something that went right along with the cliche of ignorance is bliss, right? And I say, got all these scary scenarios. He goes, well, yes, it's a scary scenario if you are informed. And I'm like, it's not what I wanted to hear. But if you are informed, it's scary because you see what's coming down. I have spoken to so many people about what's happening. Oh, everything's fine. No, everything's good. We're going to be fine. Don't worry about it.
It's coming back. The COVID virus.
Ignorance is bliss sometimes, because I'm scared to death because maybe I know more than I really want to know. But that's what this was all about.
And the other part about ignorance is what do you think, Sarah?
Well, to your point, Kim, it reminded me of when we spoke with Raoul Pal, and he said the same thing. Now that Biden's in office, everybody's in this utopia. He called it the hope phase. The skies are clearing, but I think it's the ignorance.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So the thing here is this. The reason I love the Wellington Letter, there's his banner, but it's got pictures, it's got colors, which I like, and this here is his fear and greed index. So. It's extreme greed today, and he talks about in here that the put and the call option ratios. everybody is so bullish. They're only calling up. They're not hedging with a put option. And you have to read this thing, but it'll explain it. The optimism is so high, and that's ignorance.
Yeah, and I'm guessing as greed goes up, intelligence goes down.
Yeah, and so here he's got his greed factor here. His charts. This is Apple, Facebook, and all those criminals out there that driving the stock price up. He's got Tesla in here, and he's got it in pictures and colors. So I'm not promoting Burt. I don't get paid. I'm not saying you should buy anything he says, but it's for your education. And he puts it in a macro, big picture, comprehensive scenario.
And one thing we didn't talk about with Burt, he's also deals in the psychology, a lot of the psychology of investing, which is the greed piece. But so he watches behavior as well as the numbers and the charts, which is probably as important, if not more important, when making those financial decisions.
Yeah, this is the most. I agree wholeheartedly. People are saying 2021 will be the worst, and some people say it'll be the best. Well, that's up to you. It really is up to you. And it could be the best and it could be the worst. Final words there, Sarah.
Well, of course, we love Burt around here, but he did say something, too, that we've now heard 3 other times with other guests, and that's about the central bank digital currency. And so I think this should be a warning to our listeners. Like if all of these experts are starting to say the same thing, they need to start looking into it more because this will be the future.
Anyway, the thing that I'm cautious about Bitcoin, and Kim and I have substantial holdings in Bitcoin, is that Jim Rogers and Burt and several other people have said, if you mess with the franchise of the central bank, which is printing money, the Fed and the European Central Bank and the Bank of Japan, they control the money system. And so all us Bitcoiners out there running around saying, we're going to screw the central bank. As Jim Rogers said on our show, he says, remember who has the guns, and they will come and knock on your door. If Zuckerberg and Dorsey can deplatform you, the central bank can send the Gestapo after you too. So we're messing with people's franchise here. What I mean that if you threaten McDonald's, they come after you. You threaten Kentucky Fried Chicken, they come after you. Well, when you mess with crypto, you're messing with the central bank. And those guys, and they got more guns and power. In his book, his thing, The Wellington Letter, he talks about Comey. He was the head of the FBI. You should read what he says about who Comey works for. It's shocking. It's shocking. These guys are criminals, but in their world, they're public servants.
Well, to your point, Trump tried to mess with the deep state. Same scenario.
Yep.
A lot of power, a lot of corruption there.
Yeah, if Dorsey, this nerd, and Zuckerberg, another nerd, and Bezos, another nerd, can take down the president of the United States, who are you? So don't mess with the Fed. So pay attention. We're still in Bitcoin and all that. We're watching, but we've got to pay attention. So anyway, that's the lesson. That's the message from the Rich Dad Radio Show. We make no recommendations. We just want you to be well informed. So again, thank you to Burt Dorman, and thank you all for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show.